Thank you, Greg. And thank you, UTSA Institute of Texan Cultures, for your continued support of metal music in our city with this wonderful event, the Return to the Metal Capital. I'd like to welcome family and friends, the esteemed panelists that will be on the stage in a bit, but most of all of you, the metal fans of San Antonio, for coming out today and supporting. It's so beautiful to see how vibrant we can still be as a community of heavy music lovers, and that we can still come together in celebration of our heritage, culture, and most important, the future of our metal scene. And as we begin this celebration, as Greg mentioned, I would also like to thank and recognize Dr. Gregory Peak. It was he who began this endeavor here at the Institute. It was his documenting of various oral histories of the metal scene in the 80s, and it was his initiative that brought us Phase 1 back in October. How many of you were here last year? Yeah. Yeah, I see some familiar faces. Welcome back. And Dr. Peak, thank you as we continue your work. It was a beautiful jumping off point, and one from which I know there will be no return. And to set the climate for today, and for those who missed it, let's just recap for a second. Phase 1 focused on the foundation that radio built in San Antonio. Where and who would we be without bands like Judas Priest, Saxon, Triumph, Rush as part of our lives? And inevitably synonymous with those conversations is our brother Joe Anthony, the Godfather. It was he who influenced so many of us, and thankfully, his spirit still resonates today. In those conversations, it's also important to mention his counterpart in radio, Lou Roney, and Jack Orban of Stone City Attractions. It was those people who, because of their positions in radio and promotions, that brought us, the fans, the music, and thus created the foundation of our scene. And through the late 70s and up and through the 80s, we saw that scene grow and grow and get bigger and bigger until we became the heavy metal capital of the world. Yes, we had high ticket sales. Yes, we sold out the arenas. And yes, we maintained an unrelenting hunger for all things heavy. But unbeknownst to us, behind the scenes, it was primarily due to a strategic plan that both Joe and Jack put together that launched the careers of bands like AC/DC, Def Leppard, Ozzy Osbourne in this town, and some would say around the world. However, it's important to note that something quite special was happening along the way. Heavy music wasn't only helping us to live richer lives, it was also creating the fires and drive inside so many young people out there who wanted to be artistic and creative and have their own presence felt in San Antonio music. It was the birth of S.A. Slayer, the birth of Juggernaut, the birth of Wizard, the birth of Bifist, and the birth of our underground metal scene. And that brings us to phase 2. You know, I was here last October as well. And let me tell you a quick story. I came in kind of late. And so I was standing on the side, on the back, and I was listening and hearing and watching what was going on. And, you know, unbeknownst to me, Buster Grant was standing right next to me. And he's elbowing me. Where are you, Buster? He's elbowing me. And he's whispering into my ear. And he's telling me, Rob, where are all the musicians at? Rob, why aren't they talking about the underground? I agreed with Buster. But now, as I stand here today, I can see how the story had to begin with radio. So today, as we move forward in this series, it's evident that the story of San Antonio's underground metal scene in the 80s has to be told from the people and the musicians who lived it. And that, my friends, is the purpose of today's event. Because not only was South Texas churning out some of the best metal music that this state had to offer, but they were also releasing songs and albums that would stand the test of time. How many of us still jam to Energetic Disassembly? How many of us still jam to Remnants of War? How many of us still jam to Future Nights? But these musicians were not only creating music, they were also embedding lasting performances and scarring them into our minds. They were breaking down boundaries in the music industry, and we'll talk more about that later. And they were also establishing individual musical careers that would take the world by storm. Now, we were not only recognized as a viable commercial market, but we were a place with a thriving metal scene, and one that others wanted to tap into, and they still do to this day. Some of those accolades include Hellstar being signed to Combat in 1984. Juggernaut releasing Baptism Under Fire on Metal Blade Records in 1986. How can we forget Wizard's wonderful performance opening up for Wasp at Daddy's in 1986? And of course, the Slayer versus Slayer show of 1984. We also saw people like Texas Music Hall of Famer Jason McMaster, master drummer Dave McClain, who you will hear from later today, the great and masterful Bobby Jarzambek, the legendary Donnie Van Stavern, and master guitarist and songwriter Larry Berrigan. All go on to successful worldwide acclaim. And I'll let these gentlemen come up here in a bit and share their stories and perspectives. However, before we begin tapping the panel, it's also important to reminisce and speak of key players and places that have supported our scene at that time and since. It's important to speak of the support because that's what keeps our scene alive. That's what keeps it thriving. Back in the day, if you remember back in the day, like if you wanted to jam new music, you'd have to like get on your bike and go to the record store. Remember that? Or get on the Via Via and go to the record store. Or walk to your friend's house after school to listen to some metal music. We needed each other far more in a time before the internet, social media, and audio files. So I would like to take this opportunity as well to recognize the past and the present. Joe Anthony in 99.5 KISS, for all the great music, but more importantly, his vision. Chuck Stanley and the Rock Report, he's here today. Texas Tracks, who supports all local music. I want to recognize Hog Wild Records. What a staple in our town. And our brother Ruben Luna, who put so much music into the hands of fans and industry people alike. Jack Orban and Stone City Attractions for all the memories. Clubs like the Via Fontana, the Cameo Theater, Sunken Gardens Theater, the Woodlawn Theater, Showcase Special Event Center, the White Rabbit, the Old Sneakers, Medieval Nights, all these places, man. All the promoters in this town who are still doing it, Twin Productions, Focus Star Media, still bringing metal to us. And one of the only few radio stations out there that's churning out metal and supporting San Antonio, the KSYM Thursday Night Metal Show. And all the current musicians out there working hard and busting ass just for the passion. And lastly, of course, is the fans. And who are the fans? Who is the scene? The answer is simple. We are. We all are. All of you, the media, the musicians in this room today. We love heavy music. And I know all of us are not inhibited or forgetful of that passion. It never leaves us. It's never left us. Did you guys ever have your mom, ask you like, "Ay, mijo, when are you gonna grow up out of that music? Es el diablo." My mom still does that today. In fact, we're proud of our love for heavy metal. We wear it on our badges of metalldom, on our t-shirts and our jackets and our hats. Our love for metal is our binding. It brings us together. And undoubtedly together, we are stronger than any of us alone. Our presence here today is a testament to that. So let us not forget this tradition. Let us not forget this moment. Let us not forget our history. Let us also not forget our fallen brothers, Renee Cox and Mark Garcia of Wizard. Steve Cooper of Slayer and Juggernaut. Vic Rial and Davey Lee of Bifist. I'd also like to add Bruce Corbett and Mike Skasha of Rigor Mortis to that list. And let's also keep in our prayers Eddie Caudilis of Juggernaut and Chris Kronk of Carrion and Slayer, who are both battling cancer right now. And let us not forget our brotherhood. Let us keep in mind that our children, our little brothers and sisters, will continue to carry the torch here in San Antonio long after we are gone. Here's to the return of the metal capital. We have reigned, and we will reign again. Thank you very much.